So for the last month or so, I've had a lot of reflection on cats, so I'll spare everyone talk about that. Although I can begin with, when you like an animal or you don't like an animal, you have a pet or something. It's very similar to sometimes living with monks. And I was just thinking about, Ajahn mentioned a little bit yesterday about biases. And one of the things that can happen quite easily with whether one's living in a monastery or not is that we develop perceptions of others, those who we live with, those who come to the monastery, they're long-term or short-term. And in our minds, it can be very tempting and very easy to think of other people in usually fairly permanent ways. This person's like that person's like this. And depending on our temperament, this can move into things that really taint this perception. And this is quite unfortunate because we can see a particular person that we know or we live with, or even someone we don't know, as being a particular way, and then we find it almost impossible to see the other ways that they are, because we can search out, based on something like aversion, their tendencies that we dislike. So if I ever say to myself, I hate when he does that thing, or he's always doing that thing, I can't stand it, or something like that, it really is reinforcing over and over again this perception we have of this person as being a particular way, in a permanent way, essentially. He's always doing that, they're always doing this. And it's quite unfortunate because then we live in a environment where we're just looking out for those potentially negative tendencies. And this is unfortunate because then this is how we just see other people, and then we can become quite negative towards others. We can become very negative in our minds and absolutely dismiss when the person fulfills something that doesn't carry our stereotype. It doesn't, of that person. They don't fulfill it. They do something kind for us, and we just ignore it. And so this is something to be very careful of, our own tendencies and biases, to look upon others with our own preferences of how we believe they are or think they are. And unfortunately, this can, in a long-term way, this can really cause major problems with disharmony. Just believing a person is a particular way, and we see them do something and say, I know why he did that, or I understand why she said that. I know. And while there might be some people who can read minds, if one doesn't have that ability, then we don't know. We have no idea a lot of the time why someone's doing something. We don't sometimes know our own karmic background, and we're perceiving and believing that we know others. And so it's very important to consistently try to challenge these perceptions we have, not only for the benefit of the people we live with, but for our own spiritual progress, our own ability to understand our dukkha, how we're causing ourselves the suffering by seeing things in a particular way. And of course, this isn't just with people, it's with all kinds of things that we have views and opinions about. But this bias is something to really pay attention to each day, several times a day, to kind of ask ourselves, am I just assuming something about that person? Do I really know? I might have lived with them for 10 years or 15 years, but this perception I have of them might really be wrong. And in fact, we can start to see that if we challenge that, then there are all kinds of things we're missing that we haven't noticed. And so the Buddha really encouraged us in our perception of others to try to focus on the good qualities that people have and encourage those qualities, both in ourselves and in others, to bring them out. And there's one sutta he really talks about a person who's, I think he's about being a good friend, and one of them is that they don't tend to focus on the person's negative qualities, and they certainly don't talk about them very often, if at all. So it's that accentuating the positive. And at the same time, he says, for ourselves, we will reveal our own negative traits, our own problems more easily, very easily. But with others, we don't tend to do that. So just kind of bringing that into focus, whether one lives in the monastery, has been in the monastery for 5 years, 10 years, 20, whatever it is, or visiting as a guest for a week, it really helps benefit our own minds to see where we're creating these biases and we're only seeing particular individuals in one dimension, in one way, and to really move out of that rut and try to challenge ourselves, challenge our minds to see things in a different way. You want